Good afternoon. And first of all, can we hear each other? Can I ask the other participants before I announce them?
Yes, Goce, we can hear you.
Okay, because we have some major problems in this area. We lost power, we lost internet in the last hour. I don't know what is happening, but we have our backups on. So I think that now everything is okay. First of all, I would like to welcome all the participants to the third panel sessions for today. That is what IFC International Finance Cooperation can do for you. This session we're going to see how we can discover the support programs of IFC for the Western Balkan regions, especially aimed for the manufacturers, for the producers who want to get into the supply chains of the multinational companies. I'm really honored to have with me our guest for today. I would like to just say hello to Mr. Eugeniu Osmochescu. Did I say it correctly?
Doesn't matter, Goce, just Eugene. Osmochescu, just Eugene, doesn't matter.
Just Eugene. He's the COSTAS team leader of the Western Balkan Manufacturing Value Chain Programs from the International Finance Corporation. Then we have Ms. Magdalena Soljakova, Senior Country Officer for Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia from the International Finance Corporation. And we have Mr. Damien, Shiels, Regional Manager for Eastern Europe and Central Asia, again from the International Finance Corporation. We have been hearing in the previous panels. We have been hearing, especially in the panel before this, the current situation in German markets. How companies should change their strategies and try to accommodate to the new ways of how business is done. As we know, it is the goal of all the manufacturers, of producers from the Balkan region, from all the countries, to get into the supply chains and to get in the on the scale up in the supply chains of the multinational companies, whether that will be foreign direct investments in the region, or that will be companies, international companies from Europe and other continents as well. But we also know how this process is. It's not so simple. It's not so easy, if I may say, for small and medium enterprises from the region, and that is why it is really important that companies utilize the support programs that are present in this area, in the Balkan area, from different type of international organizations who have their activities, who have their programs, specially designed of how they can accelerate and how they can help the growth of these companies and the easier access and the easier transition, if I may say, in entering these supply chains. I'm very pleased that we have the International Finance Corporation today here with us. IFC is one of our partners, is one of the partners and supporters of MAMEI for a longer period now. We jointly are going to work on activities that are going to be aimed for the support of the local suppliers. I would like to invite our guests to say a little bit more. First, I would like to invite Ms. Magdalena Soljakova. She's the Senior Country Officer for Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia from the IFC, as I said, and she will be discussing more about the new trends in the manufacturing industry and IFC investment strategy and experience in this field, and how the Balkan suppliers can benefit from it. So, Ms. Magdalena, if we are okay with the connection, I would like to invite you to take the floor.
Thank you, Goce. So thank you very much for the invitation, and really excited to be part of this conference and this panel. As you probably know, IFC is a member of the World Bank Group, and it's what we call the private arm of the World Bank Group. So basically, we support private enterprises in emerging markets. We are the oldest and the largest global international financial institution, and basically we work in over 100 countries globally, 120, I believe. We have offices in over 108 locations globally. Manufacturing is one of the key areas of our engagement, both in the financing and advisory side. And the reason for that is because of the very high multiplier effect that manufacturing has, the productivity gains which we are able, or actually companies able to reach in this sector. It's a big source of innovation, and it's also one of the key supporters of value addition in some of the other sectors. That being said, this is also one of the sectors which has undergone quite a bit of transition in the last couple of years, and a lot of changing trends, which actually has been really exacerbated with the onslaught of the crisis, with the COVID crisis. So the sector itself, it's very much dependent on technology, as we know. And in some of the last couple of years, we've seen quite a bit of this changes happening in general in the manufacturing sector. So we've seen, for example, that there's been a lot of focus on energy capture, the storage of energy and transmission. There's been the usage of advanced materials, whether it's nanomaterials and others. Like thermoelectric efficiency has become a big component. We've seen the onset of artificial intelligence and robotics, additive manufacturing, the zero machine breakdowns. Some of the new trends which have been happening. The digital printing with 3D becoming a big component of that. And then, of course, in the value chains, which are a key part of the manufacturing, we've actually seen quite a bit of digitalization. So basically, the onset of virtual and augmented realities, the onset of online sales, and so on and so forth. And this has not been isolated. So basically, this has been trends happening in the sector itself. However, there's been a lot of happening outside of the sector itself, which have had direct impact on the on manufacturing. So we've seen quite a bit of, in the last couple of years, trade tensions happening, which have had a big impact on how this value chain happens. So now we are talking about a lot of governments actually looking into reviving this or changing this supply chains. Whether it's the new trends of offshoring or reshoring, nearshoring, we're hearing a lot of these words, and this has put a lot of changes on how the sector is viewed. So removing basically a lot of the supply chains from the far away Asian countries into more far region, kind of more the Western Balkans, Southeastern Europe, becoming a new grounds, let's say, for a lot of these manufacturers. So this presents quite a bit of opportunities for companies setting up shop or the existing, having shops in our region, the Western Balkans and in Macedonia. However, this needs to be offset by the cost, which was, the reason for the cost and the scale, which was the reason that a lot of these companies moved into Asia. And, some of the things which, companies setting up shop in this area can actually benefit is from the flexibility and the proximity of having, companies being set up in this region. However, this will require a lot of development in terms of lean manufacturing, the technical skills which are needed, and a lot of these, advanced technologies which are being implemented in manufacturing. The other aspect which, is, or the changes and trends we're seeing is, of course, the Brexit, which is probably going to happen at the end of this calendar year. A lot of companies which have actually a large, global OEMs which have had shop in the UK are now looking at, how they can, change their locations, and this, will pose an opportunity for a lot of the companies in the Western Balkans, Southeastern Europe. So definitely a lot of the CapEx has been frozen in the UK. The expansion plans, for the suppliers as well have been frozen. So there are opportunities to see, how companies and dislocations here, I would say, can pitch, their advantages. Another aspect, and I think this is more probably very much seen in the automotive, sector, is the electrification. And the electrification, the electrical content of cars has been increasing fast. So we are seeing now, various type of what is pure electric vehicles, but we're also seeing mild hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and so on and so forth. And even the conventional cars are actually now using a lot of increasing, the use of software, but also of electronics value. And what we are seeing is that a lot of these components makers, which are actually now setting up shop, they're focusing a lot on the on these components being produced. So this is again another opportunity is to how to attract these companies which actually cater to this to the electronic software components of the electric vehicles, and support mechanical companies move towards mechatronics and advanced material engineering. So there is a lot of changes, but as they say, crisis breeds opportunities. So I think post-COVID we'll see quite a bit of shift in the manufacturing landscape, and I think a lot of the countries in this region, in the Western Balkans, particularly North Macedonia, actually can benefit from this. So to go back to what IFC can do in this and how we value or how we see manufacturing. So IFC actually invests in two big parts and two big aspects of manufacturing. One of them is influencing production scale, which is kind of increasing the volume of the production itself. The other one is the production complexity. And when we say production complexity, we mean basically three complexity triangles. So basically we look at the value chain complexity. So what are the number of activities needed to deliver a product to the market in a specific industry? We look at the process complexity, which is the number of tasks in a process through which the product is made. And we look at the product complexity, which is number of components in a product. So once we kind of analyze that, and this is where we focus, we have actually look at three strategic pillars where we actually want to invest. And our strategy focuses on these three pillars, which is the first one is basically laying the foundation of the industrial production. So in any country, you have to have the industrial base to be able to actually build on that. So basically we look into building commercially viable resource-based industries for local consumption and high value exports. We're looking at strengthening the local basic supply chains, mainly targeting local and regional demand, and supporting production and assembly of simple products in global value chains. Based on that, the second pillar actually looks to see how we can expand and diversify this manufacturing base. So basically, this is a continuation of the build-up of the foundation of the manufacturing capacities. This is developing local products and solutions focused on the local and regional markets, and helping countries become more competitive by entering multiple global value chains. And the last pillar is looking at supporting the more complex manufacturing, such as strengthening inter-industry linkages, supporting leading domestic and regional firms to build global footprints, and basically enhancing certification, basically R&D leadership. So when we talk about manufacturing, we look at two big chunks, let's say. One is base materials, which is, we define as chemicals, fertilizers, cement, glass, metals. And the other big part is light manufacturing, which is transport equipment, industrial, commercial infrastructure equipment, textile and wear, non-paper packaging, and non-food consumption goods, and advanced technology offerings. And we're actually able to support all of this areas and all of the subsectors, provided that there's a big, there's a competitive edge, whether it's to the market or to the company itself. So just to give you a little bit of a flavor, what we've done and how does our portfolio look like. In the last 10 years, we've invested over $12 billion in the manufacturing space globally, and we've had 43% of that has been in chemicals and fertilizers, 24% construction materials, and 33% in light manufacturing. So you can see that this has been literally, where we've focused the most in our investments. In terms of what we can do, I think later on Damien and Eugeniu are going to talk a little bit about advisory program for the supply chain management, and this is one big aspect of our work, is giving advice, using up the know-how we have acquired over the years to support companies in their quest, to expand, to improve, and so on and so forth. But I think also we come up with money, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, we're a financing institution. So we provide, kind of bread and butter is long-term financing, long-term loans, mezzanine equity financing instruments. And this is, what we've kind of built our brand around. And this is something which, we try to, assist companies with. But besides that, we are part of the World Bank Group. So we do have, the whole kind of political, shall I say, backings of being a member of the World Bank Group, which we bring to the table. We have local offices, I mentioned before. The local presence and expertise is actually invaluable. We have actually able to do local currency financing. We have in-depth industry knowledge, which is basically catered around our industry specialists, which we have industry specialists, in-house industry specialists for almost every single subsector. And at the end of the day, not to forget, sustainability. So we are still, very much focused on building sustainable businesses and, building sustainable businesses, which talks about, climate change, how we can support this. It's energy efficiency, and it's actually kind of building up companies in a sustainable manner. So I'll pause there, and I'll invite my colleagues to take over to discuss a little bit more about what is the type of work we're doing actually with supporting supply and value chains in the sector, and how companies in Macedonia can benefit from this. Thank you.
Thanks, Magdalena.
Thank you, Magdalena. Before we continue with Mr. Damien, can I just ask a short question? Because from what we have heard, there is a lot of experience inside the organization, and you have a lot of experience working with all these years. What is important, I think, for many of the companies to understand, and it can be just in short, is how long usually does the process take, from making the decision that we want to move further on in the value chain, and we want to, become part of the multinational.
I cannot hear you, Goce. I lost you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I will make the switch with I will ask the question later on. We can continue with Mr. Damien if it's okay.
I actually heard about you ask how long does it take for us to make a decision. Was that the question?
No, I will ask later on. I will switch to another network because the electricity is finally back.
Okay, thanks.
So, Mr. Damien, we can continue with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. My name is Damien Shiels. I'm the regional manager for the advisory services team that works along with Magdalena's team to help develop projects across the region. Can you guys see me? You guys can see me, okay, yeah. And the type of work we do is we work with governments on private sector and financial sector development. So part of our responsibilities is to try and develop programs that help grow specific sectors. So in this case, in the Balkans, we're looking at the manufacturing sector. In other places, we're looking at digital finance, we're looking at the IT sectors, health sectors, and things like that. So in this case, I'm going to show and I'm going to build on some of the themes that Magdalena has already shared, and then go into some of the details and hand over to Eugene to kind of walk through more of the details of the program. I think when we look at what we're trying to achieve with our program, it's both relatively straightforward because it's focused exclusively on the manufacturing sector, and yet complex, because what we're trying to do is to work across 3 separate countries for now, possibly adding more in the future, with the idea to create the most important thing, one of the most important factors that I think Magdalena mentioned, which is scale, right? And this is one of the challenges across many countries. And even I myself am from Ireland. And so a lot of the challenge for Ireland, for instance, to build up its manufacturing industry was that we never had it. We were known more for our cattle, our dairy sector, and our butter than anything else. And I think the challenge that we faced was, how do you leverage something outside of the country to develop the program of growing manufacturing in the country? And we managed to do that, driven by FDI, and also driven by the proximity to Europe and a number of policies that were instituted in the country. And then many of those had to do with training of the workforce, financial incentives that were put in place at that time, particularly in the growing stages, and then adapting that to producing a value proposition for the country that then could be grown and promoted in countries like North America, in places like North America and Asia, to help bring those manufacturers into the country. I think as we look at it, the challenges we face in terms of the Western Balkans now is getting more acute, because, as Magdalena mentioned, this crisis has brought about a lot of potential changes in the way that global value chains function, right? And I think it's hard to underestimate how potentially important. And the key thing for us to be clear about here is nobody really knows how much these value chains are going to change and how much they've already changed. What we're hearing at the moment is rumors. There's an immense amount of material online that have developed in terms of research. On this one page, I've shared some information on Savills report, McKinsey, the WTO, the World Bank, that are all looking at these factors of nearshoring and onshoring in terms of changing the way that these dispersed value chains have functioned. Just looking at the Savills, you can see, look, the key factor we were looking at before COVID was the trade war, and how the trade war was changing the way that manufacturing companies and services companies were looking at production and global value chains. And I think that was also impacted, even though Europe wasn't directly in it, there was starting to be a reevaluation in Europe about, okay, what does this mean for us as well? And how does that dynamic change how we also participate? The conclusion from Savills' report obviously is that full-scale onshoring is probably not going to happen, but certain amounts of onshoring, so back into Europe itself, will happen. But I think the other element is that the periphery around the European market will benefit probably the most. And I think when you look at the EY's statement on this, and they do a lot of tracking of FDI, there's clearly an opportunity, and they see it as something that should be taken advantage of. So companies and countries and the governments that represent those countries need to start thinking now about how to take advantage of these potential seismic shifts in the value chains. And so the World Bank Group, for instance, has looked at it in the context of what does it mean for Vietnam? What does it mean for Ethiopia? Can they capture more? What do they need to do? What policies do they need to put in place? The McKinsey report looks at a lot of the risks associated with this rebalancing. And I think I would urge everyone that participates in this forum to spend a little time reading these materials, because they are giving the perspectives upon which a new strategy could be built in a country like North Macedonia, and to think about how what this has in terms of implications for the country strategy and also the strategy at the level of the industry. For our project, what we're looking at is essentially what we're trying to do is how can we improve integration to get to that factor of scale that we discussed among manufacturing firms within the Balkans region, and specifically focusing on Serbia, North Macedonia, and Kosovo. And here we have 3 components, not to be confused with the 3 pillars that Magdalena mentioned, which is on the mass strategy for the region. This is the 3 components in this particular project that we're looking at, which is, the first one is increasing connectedness, looking at ways in which local small and medium, but also medium in terms of relative to European size. We're really focusing on the medium and larger off-takers that are in these markets to see how we connect them to foreign direct investments and also through exports opportunities to the market in Europe. We're looking at improving manufacturing capabilities to provide, the quality and goods at standard at which these companies need to be supplied. And then thirdly, we're looking at what are the things in the investment environment, in the enabling environment that are standing in the way of improved production locally, but also better connectedness so that products can make their way from one point at transformation level 1 to another point at transformation level 2, so that intermediate products can be supplied into final manufacturers that may exist in another country in the Western Balkans. And this looks at everything from tariffs and VAT treatment all the way through to how labor can participate in different manufacturing processes, even though it takes place across borders. We designed this project before COVID, but ultimately feel that it may have come into its own during the COVID crisis, because at the end of the day, there's now a lot of pressures on firms in terms of their existing supplier relationships. So these are starting to get shifted because the entire value chain is suffering because of slowdowns in buying and production. But at the same time, there's this seismic shift that we've talked about. And so we know there's a need to support local firms to leverage these opportunities. And many times it's information asymmetries. So the lack of information that is stopping deals from happening, rather than necessarily the capabilities of those firms. We're looking at how do you improve the capabilities when ideas and opportunities are identified. And then importantly, to foster this link between what is the public sector planning and policy and what the firms at the firm level need to grow. And then the importance of intermediate business associations and manufacturing associations and other institutions that can be brought to bear from the side of the private sector to help deliver and support this process. And so we're looking at some small activities at the start to help identify what the challenges are. And then obviously, when we look at one of the main components, which is looking at the platform itself. And I'll talk about the platform and then I'll allow Eugene to tackle the other two components of the project. But what we're hoping to overcome with this platform is to provide a way that opportunities can be communicated, to get over these information asymmetries, which individual firms can look and figure out a way in which they can identify what it is, what are the capabilities they can offer, and then we can try and match those with what buyers are demanding. So what are the challenges? What are we trying to solve? Buyers really aren't intrinsically at the moment under the current global value chains motivated to source from the Western Balkans, right? There's many other options and there's many other places that you can kind of source from that have scale, that have familiarity, that have the ability to produce products in ways that are well established in those markets. At the same time, there's no kind of one place where buyers can go to understand what the opportunities are across several countries in the Western Balkans. And that's not necessarily the case. You look at countries like Vietnam, China, even Turkey to a certain extent, there's places you can go to get pretty good information on who the suppliers are and who you could potentially source from. Many of the suppliers in the region suffer from, whether they're qualified, whether they've been pre-qualified to participate in a value chain of a company. And then all of this can entail extra costs. So what we were looking at is then understanding from the suppliers in the Western Balkans what are the constraints that they feel, right? So there's a difficulty in reaching and understanding who's buying what and how these processes and procedures work. At the same time, there's some anecdotal information that's coming out of missions and fairs that, look, we can do a deal. There's a deal over here, there's a deal there, but there's no consistency in what it takes to develop, consummate, and then conclude a successful deal in terms of supply and in terms of other activities. Then at this stage, you're caught in a conundrum. So the supplier, it says, doesn't have visibility and then it can't upgrade. So how do you manage this situation where you are, as a supplier, trying to identify what the criteria are, and then as a buyer, trying to get to the bottom of whether the supplier can actually supply at scale and at quality required? And it's, so there's a bit of lack of understanding as well. Ultimately, what we felt would be an interim solution in a way to start the information flowing is to create a platform where sellers could register or suppliers could register and profile what they can offer. And then we can use that to approach buyers to get to a situation where more and more of these conversations can start to happen. Plus, when you think about it in terms of COVID, there's huge constraints now because of the challenges in going to trade fairs that are no longer taking place, business missions that aren't happening because of lockdowns. And so there needs to be another way in which companies can communicate with each other. And at a whole, countries can start to understand what types of companies are having success in making these links and how can that be fostered across the country. So let me stop there and hand over to Eugene that can go through maybe some of the other aspects of the project and explain how we hope to develop the program, and then ultimately how we hope to work with you to make this a success. And then I'll hang around and hopefully we'll get some questions near the end. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Damien. Just from the beginning, to echo what Damien is saying, that about the platforms, we have assessed about 500 platforms, potential platforms, and none of them would satisfy buyers' needs, sellers' needs, and our needs as we see it while going forward as a short and medium term mitigation approach to the COVID-19 situation. And going to the second component about the increased capabilities is where we shall, and we did plan in the past before the COVID-19 pandemic, we did plan to hit the road and meet individual firms and to work with every single individual firm to see the needs and to see how we can assist those companies. And I'm also linking it to the platform as well. So I'm not saying that only the different companies will be working with us, or we'll be working with different companies. We can work with companies which are in the platform, with the individual companies which are not part of the platform. And there we are coming with a package of advisory services, not only from perspectives to increase the capability and capacities, but also from the governance point of view of the company, also from the vocational training, capacity building. And in discussions with potential partners of ours, we see that even the vocational training could be part of a platform, of a digitized platform that we can go ahead. And for instance, in North Macedonia, we were planning to have more than 70 companies met together with the team, which is in Skopje, and I'm being based in Belgrade, together with Magdalena, while Damien is based in Vienna. Same in other countries as well, in Serbia and in Kosovo. In all of these countries, we have identified during the pre-implementation phase, which is ending this November, potential partners and counterparts. And if, for instance, in North Macedonia, we're working closely with MAMEI, with the Minister of Finance, with the Economic Chamber. In Serbia, we're working with RAS as one of the main partners, with the Chamber of Commerce. In Kosovo, we'll be working with Chiesa as one of the main counterparts of ours. And for advancing this agenda of ours, we have concluded memorandums of understanding with different counterparts, Minister of Finance in North Macedonia, MAMEI in North Macedonia. And this is the plan going forward. And here I'm getting step by step to the third component, which is rather a cross-cutting component. If identified any bottlenecks, any burdens in order to invest, to reinvest, then we'll work with the public sector in fixing these issues. And I'll give only one example from North Macedonia, which is really speaking, is the tariff harmonization that has been identified as the main issue by almost all existing companies and potential FDIs that needs to be fixed in order to increase the level of investments in North Macedonia. So that's exactly what we've done together with other IFC projects implemented in the region, and there are already results. the Ministry of Economy has adopted a decree for a year-term period to reduce the number of tariffs, which is a really good result, but we need to go and to move further. So here as well, we'll be working further with companies with potential and existing FDIs to identify other bottlenecks, and together with MAMEI, and together with the Economic Chamber, and together with any other stakeholders. So these three components, these three pillars, as Damien said, will be the main for our activities. And this is their objectives. These are our objectives as well, that the main target that we have is to increase investments, at the end of the day, to create jobs as well, and to assist companies. On the platform, we'll be starting with the pilot sometimes in December, January, with all the preparations. So by June next year, we might have the platform up and running. Again, we don't know it yet. We have to identify everything, but there we'll have to follow our IFC internal procedures as, for instance, due diligence. We do have certain thresholds. We certainly do have certain rules and procedures to be followed. And this is the due diligence that we need to do for every single company that we'll be dealing with going forward. But as Damien put it on the slide, we are for more than 40 months in our implementation. We will be in our implementation, and we plan to rock and roll further with MAMEI and other stakeholders, as we already discussed with Goce, not only once, but even back in 2019, that we can support. And the format of our activities would be on a bilateral basis with the government, on bilateral basis with companies, with business associations. Outreach campaign, why not, based on some of the experiences and lessons learned we had in the region already, while implementing other projects, which did bring success, which did bring investments. And that's the most important that we have to aim at. I will stop there, Goce, and if there are any questions on particular activities, things that the participants are interested, we're here to respond to any questions, not to take a lot of time, but better focus on discussions. Thanks, Damien. Thanks, Goce. Thanks, Magdalena.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. It was actually, before we'll check now with the questions, but I had a question that I previously started to speak, but due to the connection, it was a little bit disturbed. This is a question that actually I think that many of the companies will have, and I would like to hear all of your points of view on this. Actually, it goes on two sides. Mr. Damien said also that each country need to rethink their strategies in order to know in which direction they would like to move, and whether the level of support they will put into their companies from different sectors into entering certain supply chains or developing certain subsectors or sectors in the industry. But what I think is really important is the companies to understand, based on your experience, because you have worked for many years in different countries, how long does it take, for example, for a certain company that would like to, has the motivation and the idea that they want to move up the value chain, they want to go further to find new international clients. So, they have to invest in many things, in new technology, in know-how, in training of their workers, in certifications, in marketing activities, going back and forth to the market and receiving the feedback. So from your perspective, how many years, because I would say years, it takes usually for a company to accomplish what they have, put as a goal on the beginning of this kind of journey? For example, just leaving only the domestic market and saying, yes, we want to go international, and we want to be part of many supply chains or a couple of supply chains based on our capacities on multinational companies. So this is a question for all of you.
Glad to tackle a bit on Magdalena come in, but I think I'm going to disappoint you, Goce, and provide probably an unsatisfactory answer. This is something that is not easy to generalize, right? But I think the more important way maybe for me to kind of tackle this would be to look at what are the criteria, right? So I think the first thing is the company needs to know its current capabilities relative to those that are currently supplying buyers that might be interested in its products. The second thing is to have a good business intelligence capability within the firms to start looking for these types of opportunities, right? So in many cases, firms, are so focused on their current production that they haven't, they're not looking in a serious way. A lot of people look in an unserious way, but in a serious way as to what opportunities might exist in the future. And then thirdly is to go out and start to explore those opportunities and then be prepared to think what type of investments are required to bring about the standards, the production capability, the changes in the manufacturing floor at a minimum to be able to supply something like A, B, and C. And so in terms of criteria, it's knowing well the current operations, knowing how those operations operate relative to others, knowing what types of opportunities on the uptrend and where they can go, maybe benchmarking themselves against other firms that have been successful in developing either export opportunities or supplier contracts within the markets, FDIs, to foreign direct investors. And then also to think to keeping up to date on the trends as they're happening, right? There's a difficulty there, and I'll stop here, but the challenge is to look at the trends and not go completely overwhelmed by them, to not be able to make any decisions, and then to be able to identify those trends that make sense for the business. And that helps with events like this, membership in organizations like yours, but then also thinking as well about how to gather further information about what's happening in the source markets. Let me stop there and see if my colleagues want to add in.
Maybe I'll just add, I think this is a very complex question. It's actually, I don't think we can answer with, how many years and, what it takes. But, where we've seen actually companies, successful companies trying to, being able to transcend, beyond their own borders and to become regionally and globally competitive. These have been companies which have looked really hard into seeing, what are the competitive advantages which we can generate, whether it's, from the markets would come, our location, the proximity to certain markets, and, what are the capabilities we have in our countries, what is the type of, skill sets which already exist that could be developed, that which we can utilize and, being able to do, and produce products. I think, for Macedonia, there's one very important aspect, and that's that there is already an existing FDI, field there. There are companies in certain areas which have already, come into the countries. So I think for Macedonian companies, it's going to be extremely important for them to see who these players are already existing in the markets there. Not only Macedonia, look beyond that. Look at Serbia; it's not far away, to 1 or 2 hours, right? And then try to see, how we can become suppliers, and do we have any advantages? Do we have any competitive advantages where, which we can utilize to be tied into the value chains of these companies, and start from there instead of, reinventing the wheel, right? So I don't think it's going to be, for local companies, they will not be able to compete on scale. That's a given, right? These are small markets. They will not be able to compete maybe on cost, because the cost advantage is easily disappearing, whether it's labor costs, some of the other, energy costs and so on and so forth. So what is it that we can compete with? What are some of the inputs that we, the players in these markets have to be able to compete further on? And this is the way we actually do assess, companies when we decide whether to invest or not. We look at the global benchmarks. We look at the global landscape. We don't even look at the regional anymore, especially for industries like manufacturing, which are, globally competitive. You compete with companies from, China, India, right, Africa. So, they have to determine, whether they can make a competitive product with all the certifications, which are, in manufacturing now becoming more and more complex, with all of these, environmental considerations and so on and so forth, and, be able to sell, to somebody who will be able to, who will be willing to buy. So it's a very complex questions, but, we've seen examples of companies which have succeeded. So it's not something which is not doable, but it just has to be approached in a very smart way. I'll pause there. Thanks.
Eugene, did you have something to add here, or
no?
Okay. I mean, basically, yes, we are quite familiar. Basically, that this is a longer-term process, or let's say that it's somewhere in between a short and a long-term process. it's somewhere in the middle. But from our experience with working with companies in the past, we've seen that the ones, especially with Macedonian producers, that the ones who have put their vision in front of them and decided that they want to, we really want to move beyond the borders of our country. We want to go up in the value chain. We want to find new customers, whether it is in the area that is our specialty of production at the moment, or it's something that some new segment market, for example, that they want to explore. They have to put at least, I would maybe just give the numbers now, but minimum 5 to 6 years in investing in this process. And it's not only the investment of equipment, it's not only the investment of certification and labor, but as you said, you have to really, or Mr. Damien said that you really have to gather the market information to get the sense of the market. What are the current trends? What is going to happen if we can predict what it can be happening in the next 5 years? You mentioned that, for example, the electricity vehicles are going to be a big market, huge markets for those companies who would like to maybe shift their production and their focus from traditional manufacturing, automotive manufacturing, to more sophisticated one. Actually, I was in a workshop organized by the IFC a couple of months ago, and there was a chart presented of how many new parts and new programs in the software area are used in the vehicles today compared to a couple of years ago. I believe it was the example of the Model F-150 from Ford, and it's stunning how the technology is moving forward, how the trends are moving forward. And this is what we would like to encourage all the companies from Macedonia and from the Balkan region, that they really need to, first to step into the process and make the final decision. Yes, we want to go in this road, and we would give all that it takes, of course, with support from the government, if there are some programs, with support from international organizations, with some luck, because this is also needed, especially in times like this. But this is the most important thing. I have been reviewing just now the question panel. There are not any questions from the viewers at the moment. Maybe because some of them have been on the panel since 10 o'clock this morning. But what I would like to tell everyone that actually all these sessions are recorded. And for the ones who have missed the sessions, if they couldn't log in today to the platform, the session will be placed in the past sessions place, so they can be seen also tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So we expect that, especially tomorrow when we have the business direct meetings, that the sessions will be seen by many other companies who could have not joined today. Well, if you have some final maybe remarks to tell to the audience, or some final thoughts, I would invite you to do it, or maybe we can slowly wrap up the session I'm expecting really hard, when the full process of programming implementation will start and the work with the companies on the ground will be set up.
So maybe just very quickly, Goce, and I can hand over to others. We're looking forward to working with firms across the region, particularly North Macedonia, and would welcome their opinions, insights, and the ways in which we can execute and the way we can improve. And I know maybe Magdalena and Eugenie might want to contribute as well.
So just going to say that, we are really excited about this program, and you probably know that it's been in preparation for a while now, but I think maybe the timing is perfect now with, the onset of the COVID crisis and, the changes which are happening with the, supply chains globally. And we are really, hoping that a lot of companies, both domestic and international, which already exist, in the markets and which are planning to actually come, will become, part of this program, because we do feel that you know, there is interest from both sides. So, you know, a lot of this FDIs, which when they come to the market, I mean, one of the things which they say is, oh, you would like to localize, right? We'd like to get connected to as many as possible, you know, local firms. But then they run into the issue of they don't know who the players are, they don't know their capabilities, and if they meet somebody, you know, they really need to develop. On the other side, we have the local companies, you know, which are typically SMEs who don't understand, you know, who are these players? I mean, how we can get in touch with them, you know, how we can get into their value chain. So really, we are hoping with this program actually to bring this together, you know, to benefit both sides. You know, from one side to you know, improve the supply chains of the players in the markets, but on the other side also to enhance the you know, the productivity and the you know, competitiveness of the local you know, manufacturing players.
And just picking up where Magdalena left, literally this morning, we had also discussions with other stakeholders in North Macedonia that are involved in this kind of programs, not necessarily exactly as ours, but have tangencies with us. So we will be coming certainly to all of these meetings with a complete picture and a mosaic to be put together so that we can assist the companies from different angles. And really, as Damien was saying, and Magdalena looking forward for this, since that was only one activity, or the main activity, lagging behind in time a little bit given the COVID-19 pandemic. So we shall hit the roads as soon as possible and have all of these discussions rather soon than later.
Well, actually, this is why we, in what we have said in the final words, it's this is why we exactly started the Macedonian Manufacturing Expo a couple of years ago. It was basically, the idea was to give the opportunity to the Macedonian companies at the beginning, and then from last year we opened it regionally with companies from Albania, Kosovo, Serbia, Montenegro, etc. To get in touch and connect with potential new buyers, but not only FDIs in the country and in the region, but also companies from European Union. And what we see so far as a result, besides the concluded business deals and the established business relations that have happened, and they're continuous, that now we have continuous collaboration between buyers and suppliers from the prior events. But what we see from the companies as their feedback is the know-how and the experience they receive from the buyers, actually from the companies, because this is what you have said. They will need to understand what is there that the buyer is requesting, what kind of what kind of certification, technology, setup of production, change of mindset the companies will have to do in order to climb higher the value chain and become a respectable and known supplier in different countries. So I believe that this tradition will go on. I would really like to thank you for participating in this event. I'm really sorry that this year due to the COVID pandemic, we could not do the physical type of event that we planned. Actually, we were planning to have it even bigger event than last year, but I hope that soon the situation will be put somehow under control, that next year we can see each other in a physical event. And as you said, the COVID crisis also is putting a serious economical challenge in front of all the national economies and the companies. It also, from the other side, gives a great opportunity for the companies who would like to remodel their business working and to find new opportunities and to act on them really fast. So I would like to thank you again for the participation, and I would like to say thank you to all the participants of the today conference panels at the Macedonian Manufacturing Expo. They can continue with the other content of the event, with the virtual fair, with the connect part where they can do the networking with other participants, and we will see each other tomorrow in the business to business meetings. So thank you and have a great day.